I'm sorry, but you can't sit together. Rules are rules, snapped the flight attendant. Unaware her careless words would soon shake the entire airline, T. Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The afternoon sun filtered through towering glass windows, casting golden streams of light across Terminal 3. The airport buzzed with the typical rush of passengers, families hugging goodbye, businessmen tapping hurriedly on their laptops, and travelers shuffling through security lines. Amid the bustling crowd stood Henry and Margaret Lawson, a gentle couple whose tender interactions betrayed decades of companionship. At 78, Margaret's elegant silver curls framed her serene face, complemented by her soft lavender shawl. Henry, 80, tall and poised despite his age, gently supported Margaret's arm as they navigated the bustling terminal. They moved at their own pace, patient smiles greeting those who passed by hurriedly. Today, their journey held special meaning. It marked the 50th anniversary of SkyNation Airways, the renowned airline they had founded decades ago. Despite their immense success, the Lawsons were humble, preferring anonymity and simplicity over fame. Yet their passion for aviation and treating passengers with genuine care had built an enduring legacy of service excellence. As they approached Gate K-12, Margaret glanced at their boarding passes. She paused, looking puzzled. "Henry, our seats are different," she said softly, squinting slightly to recheck the numbers printed clearly on the tickets. Henry took a closer look, adjusting his glasses. "You're right, dear. You're in 7A and I'm in 12C. Perhaps there was a mistake at check-in. Let's ask the flight attendant if she can seat us together," Margaret suggested warmly. The couple patiently joined the boarding line. Passengers shuffled onto the plane, greeted briskly by flight attendant Amanda Hughes. Amanda, tall with her dark hair pulled back severely, wore an air of busy efficiency. The rush of passengers had already made her irritable, and her tone was clipped and impatient as she directed travelers to their seats. When Margaret and Henry reached Amanda, Margaret offered a polite smile, softly speaking. "Excuse me, dear. It appears our seats are separated. Would it be possible for us to sit together?" Amanda barely looked up from scanning tickets, answering brusquely. "Seats are assigned and cannot be changed. Please move along." Margaret hesitated, a look of confusion clouding her gentle features. "I understand, dear, but perhaps you could see if there's anything." Amanda abruptly cut her off. "Ma'am, if I make exceptions for you, I'd have to do it for everyone. Please take your assigned seats immediately." The stern dismissal stunned Margaret into silence. Henry's protective instincts stirred, but he gently squeezed Margaret's hand in reassurance, guiding her carefully toward their seats. He quietly murmured to his wife, "It's all right, dear. Let's not worry." Passengers who overheard the exchange glanced sympathetically at the elderly couple. An uncomfortable silence settled in, broken only by Amanda's continued sharp instructions to boarding passengers. Margaret carefully settled into seat 7A, positioned near a window. Her eyes anxiously searched the cabin until she spotted Henry several rows behind, quietly finding his own seat. Her heart sank. After years of flying side by side, being separated felt inexplicably painful. As Amanda moved down the aisle, Margaret softly reached out again. "Excuse me, I'd greatly appreciate some water, if possible." Amanda sighed audibly, annoyed at the interruption. "You'll have to wait until beverage service starts," she replied sharply, moving past without waiting for Margaret's quiet acknowledgement. Seated behind Margaret, young mother Laura Bennett had noticed the elderly woman's distress. She gently tapped Margaret's shoulder. "Ma'am, I have a spare bottled water. Would you like it?" Margaret turned, smiling gratefully, eyes misting slightly at the stranger's kindness. "Thank you so much, dear. You're very thoughtful." Margaret took a gentle sip, carefully folding her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Laura curiously asked, "Is that your husband over there?" Margaret nodded softly, her voice tender. "Yes, dear. We've flown countless times together. This is the first time we've ever been separated." The sadness in Margaret's voice stirred Laura's heart, and she glanced at Henry, noticing his quiet, frequent glances forward toward his beloved wife. Even seated apart, their connection was evident to every nearby passenger, silently rooting for the couple to reunite. Meanwhile, Amanda completed her final passenger check brusquely. Her colleague, Carlos, noticed her tense demeanor, quietly remarking, "Amanda, Perhaps we could have accommodated that elderly couple. They looked genuinely distressed. Amanda dismissed him sharply. Rules exist for a reason. It's not our job to coddle passengers. Carlos shook his head slightly, uneasy but choosing not to press further. Back in seat 12C, Henry gazed out the window thoughtfully. Though his outward calm reassured passengers, his heart silently ached at being separated from Margaret. He remembered vividly their early years, establishing SkyNation Airways from humble beginnings. Back then, every passenger was personally greeted. Each flight felt like welcoming family. The stark contrast to today's rigid treatment saddened him deeply. Henry quietly resolved to address this later, determined no passenger would feel so unnecessarily rejected again. Their airline had stood for compassion and empathy from day one. Today's flight reminded him exactly why they had founded SkyNation in the first place. Throughout the cabin, whispers gently spread about the elderly couple, passengers noticing Margaret's quiet discomfort and Henry's dignified distress. Amanda, oblivious, continued her duties coldly, unaware her harshness would soon ripple far beyond this simple flight. As the plane began taxiing to the runway, Margaret closed her eyes softly, silently wishing Henry were beside her. She never imagined celebrating their airline's anniversary this way, separated and misunderstood on their own plane. The engines roared gently, lifting the aircraft smoothly into the bright afternoon sky. But within Margaret and Henry, emotions lingered quietly unsettled, echoing unanswered questions about kindness and dignity in the very company they had built from nothing. Little did Amanda know, her decision had not only deeply affected the hearts of SkyNation Airways founders, but would soon echo across the entire airline, changing countless lives, including her own. As Flight 486 soared effortlessly through the clear skies above the Midwest, Margaret leaned gently against the window, her gaze drifting thoughtfully through distant clouds. The unfamiliar emptiness beside her, a seat usually occupied by Henry's reassuring presence, gnawed silently at her heart. Rows behind, Henry quietly reflected on the incident at boarding. His initial resolve to let it pass was overshadowed by the quiet dignity of his wife's sadness. Margaret never complained, never sought attention, yet the subtle distress in her gentle eyes was something he could not easily dismiss. He glanced again toward her, noticing how small and vulnerable she seemed sitting alone, shoulders slightly hunched beneath her lavender shawl. Henry considered briefly speaking with the flight crew, but decided against causing further disruption. However, the unease lingered, a reminder of how important the values they established for SkyNation Airways truly were. The treatment they received was not reflective of their lifelong mission, to treat every passenger with respect and kindness. Meanwhile, Amanda briskly maneuvered her beverage cart through the aisle, efficiently dispensing drinks and snacks with rigid politeness. She still felt irritable from the earlier exchanges, failing to notice the quiet murmurs of passengers about the elderly couple. Her colleague, Carlos, however, remained uneasy about Amanda's abruptness, carefully observing passengers' subtle reactions to her behavior. Suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled softly, followed by the captain's calm voice filling the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds speaking. Today is a very special day for SkyNation Airways. We have the distinct honor of welcoming on board our founders, Henry and Margaret Lawson. Exactly 50 years ago, they founded SkyNation, shaping it into one of the most beloved airlines in the country. Please join me in thanking Mr. and Mrs. Lawson for their remarkable vision and decades of dedication." A gentle wave of astonishment rippled through the cabin as passengers turned instinctively toward Margaret and Henry. Margaret's eyes widened in surprise, her pale cheeks flushing softly as passengers began applauding warmly. Henry acknowledged the applause modestly with a gentle nod and wave, his heart swelling with gratitude yet uncomfortable with the sudden spotlight. Several rows ahead, Amanda's hand froze midway through pouring coffee, droplets spilling unnoticed onto the tray table. Her heart jolted painfully, a sensation of dread instantly gripping her chest. The elderly couple she had brusquely dismissed, were they truly the founders of SkyNation Airways? Panic swiftly replaced her earlier confidence. She immediately glanced toward Margaret, who, despite the applause and respectful attention, remained humbly reserved. The quiet dignity Amanda had ignored earlier now seemed glaringly obvious. sharply contrasting Amanda's own behavior. Amanda's breathing quickened as guilt and embarrassment collided fiercely within her chest. Carlos stepped close, his voice quiet but firm. "Amanda, you need to make this right." Her face pale, Amanda struggled to compose herself. "How? I've already made such a terrible mistake." "An apology would be a good start," Carlos suggested gently, clearly sympathetic but resolute. "This isn't just about rules. It's about respect." As passengers' applause gently faded, Amanda hesitated, torn between embarrassment and regret. Eventually, swallowing her pride, she slowly moved toward Margaret's seat. "Mrs. Lawson," she began softly, voice shaking slightly. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Margaret glanced up, surprised by the humility in Amanda's voice. "Of course, dear," she replied gently. Amanda knelt carefully beside her seat, eyes downcast. "I want to sincerely apologize for my behavior earlier. I had no idea who you and your husband were," Margaret softly interrupted, her eyes filled with gentle wisdom. "Amanda, please understand. It should never matter who we are. Respect and kindness are something everyone deserves equally." Margaret's gentle words were spoken without bitterness or anger, yet their profound impact pierced Amanda's heart deeply. Tears stung Amanda's eyes as she nodded slowly, her voice nearly breaking. "You're right. I understand now, truly. I'm so sorry." Margaret placed a gentle hand upon Amanda's shoulder. "You've learned something valuable today. Let this guide you always." Amanda slowly rose, nodding solemnly. Passengers who witnessed the sincere exchange murmured softly, deeply moved by Margaret's grace and Amanda's humility. Meanwhile, a thoughtful young man, Matthew Donovan, quietly approached Henry's seat. "Mr. Lawson, please take my seat next to your wife," he offered respectfully. "It would be an honor." Henry smiled warmly, deeply touched. "Thank you, young man. Your kindness means a great deal." Henry rose, moving slowly but gracefully to join Margaret. As he approached, Margaret's eyes brightened instantly. "Henry," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet relief, gently squeezing his hand as he settled beside her. Passengers watched silently, deeply moved by the quiet reunion. Amanda, now standing quietly near the front galley, felt an unfamiliar sensation of genuine warmth seeing the couple reunited, recognizing the emotional impact of her earlier choices. Henry leaned close, quietly speaking to Margaret. "It seems our anniversary has become more eventful than we expected." Margaret smiled softly, gently patting his hand. "Perhaps we've reminded them, and ourselves, of the principles we cherish most." As the flight continued smoothly above the gentle clouds, the atmosphere on board had subtly shifted. Amanda's demeanor changed, reflecting genuine humility as she moved through the cabin, ensuring every passenger felt seen and valued. Carlos noticed the transformation with quiet satisfaction, hopeful that Amanda's lesson would resonate long beyond today's flight. Henry gently whispered to Margaret, "You've always had the gift of touching hearts, dear." Margaret's eyes sparkled gently, her smile soft yet knowing. "Compassion isn't difficult, Henry. Sometimes people just need a gentle reminder." Outside, sunlight bathed the airplane in golden warmth as it moved steadily toward its destination. Inside, a deeper warmth filled hearts, a quiet affirmation that genuine respect and empathy were SkyNation's true foundations, destined to endure far beyond today's memorable flight. The hum of the engines faded into the background as the buzz inside the cabin steadily rose. News of Henry and Margaret Lawson's identity had rippled through the rows like a quiet storm. More and more passengers glanced their way, many surprised, some murmuring their respect, and others, frankly, shocked that the airline's own staff hadn't known. Amanda, visibly pale and tight-lipped, returned to the galley and leaned against the service wall, her heartbeat racing. Her hands still trembled from the brief exchange with Margaret. Despite the founder's grace and lack of judgment, Amanda couldn't shake the weight of shame. Carlos approached silently. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "I embarrassed myself and this airline," Amanda whispered. "I feel like I just spit on a legacy I didn't even realize I was walking through." Carlos crossed his arms. "Then do something about it. Turn this into a moment of integrity. Go beyond the apology. Make it right." Amanda stared down the aisle at the couple now reunited, Henry holding Margaret's hand gently, their heads close together in quiet conversation. That sight alone burned into her memory more than any reprimand ever could. Suddenly, a commotion arose near row 6. A business-class passenger, young, loud, entitled, was demanding to change his seat because he didn't like being so close to all the drama. Amanda approached, attempting to de-escalate. "Sir, I understand, but we ask for your patience. The flight will land shortly." He scoffed. "Patience? You people can't even recognize your own bosses. No wonder customer service has gone downhill." Before Amanda could respond, a calm but commanding voice interrupted. "I'm afraid I have to agree," Henry said as he stood up. He walked forward a few steps, every eye turning toward him. SkyNation was founded on the principle that every traveler deserves dignity. From business class to the last row. My wife and I started this company with that simple belief, and it appears we have drifted dangerously far from it. The cabin fell into reverent silence. Even the young executive's sneer faded into discomfort. Amanda stood still, her posture straightened, eyes on Henry. However, Henry continued, turning to Amanda, "What defines us is not our mistakes, but how we respond to them." Amanda felt her throat tighten. "Mr. Lawson," she began, voice cracking, but he raised a hand gently. "No lectures, Amanda. You've already apologized. But words are only the beginning. If you truly understand what this airline stands for, show us." "Show them." Amanda nodded, eyes glistening. "I will." The flight landed in New York to a surprisingly emotional applause. No one clapped for touchdown. They clapped for Henry and Margaret. And perhaps, in a quiet way, for Amanda's growth too. Back at corporate headquarters, the story had already reached executive channels. Dozens of employees watched the viral post on social media. A candid photo of Amanda kneeling beside Margaret, the caption reading, "She didn't know they owned the airline, but she remembered why service matters." In the days that followed, Amanda received an unexpected email. It was a personal invitation to a private leadership retreat, one hosted annually by the Lawsons themselves for rising team members in the airline. Her hands shook reading it. And at the bottom, a handwritten note scanned in from Margaret. "We all stumble, Amanda. But when we stand again with humility and resolve, we help others rise too." Meanwhile, Margaret sat on a sunny bench at the edge of Central Park, Henry beside her, both enjoying the quiet buzz of life around them. Pigeons danced near their feet, and children's laughter echoed faintly from a playground in the distance. "I never imagined our anniversary would become a public event," Margaret chuckled, sipping tea from a thermos. Henry smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. Maybe it's what the airline needed. A reminder that kindness is the best flight path of all. Margaret leaned her head against his. And that love, true, enduring love, is the most loyal passenger of all. The flight had barely landed when the footage began spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. A quiet passenger near row 9, who had captured the emotional moment when Henry stood to speak, uploaded it with the simple caption, "Kindness shouldn't require status." This couple built the airline and still got treated like nobodies. Within hours, hashtags like #SkyNationFounders and #RespectYourPassengers were trending. Twitter exploded with outrage, praise, and deep reflection. Former flight attendants chimed in, journalists picked up the thread, and influencers reposted with captions like, "Every flight crew should watch this video in training." Inside the terminal, Amanda avoided eye contact as passengers began disembarking. Her uniform felt heavier, her usually confident steps unsure. She glanced back one final time at Henry and Margaret, still seated, waiting patiently for the plane to clear. Carlos gave her a nod of encouragement, silently mouthing, "You did good today." Amanda approached them slowly, clutching something in her hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Lawson," she began. They both looked up, serene yet tired from the emotional toll of the day. Amanda held out a handwritten note. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I've spent every minute of this flight thinking. You reminded me why I joined this profession, why I wore this uniform in the first place." Henry opened the note and read the short but powerful message. "I will spend the rest of my career making sure no one feels like you did today." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and touched Amanda's hand. "Then we've already forgiven you." Amanda nodded and turned to go, but Margaret stopped her. "You know," she said with a faint smile, "we host a yearly leadership summit at SkyNation. This year, I hope you'll speak there." Amanda's eyes widened. Me? Why? Because no one learns from a perfect record. But people do learn from someone who falls and stands up better. Meanwhile, at SkyNation headquarters in Manhattan, the CEO and board were in an emergency meeting. The viral video had caught them off guard, not just because of the publicity, but because it exposed the gap between the company's image and its current reality. This, the CEO stated, replaying Henry's speech on screen, is who we were. And it must be who we are again. A motion was passed unanimously. Immediate reevaluation of employee training, an overhaul of passenger service standards, and a full-length campaign centered around a new slogan: every seat, every story. And at the center of it all, Henry and Margaret Lawson. A few days later, Amanda received an official letter from the SkyNation board. "Dear Amanda, we believe redemption is more powerful than perfection. We'd like to offer you a new role, Head of Passenger Empathy Training. With your permission, your story, and the Lawsons will become part of every new employee's first day." Amanda wept. She accepted. Across America, millions who had watched the viral video were moved in different ways. Some called their grandparents. Others complimented a flight attendant. But all of them remembered the soft strength of Margaret's words and the quiet wisdom of Henry's voice. And somewhere in the middle of all the chaos, a new kind of respect was taking flight. "You're the reason I became a flight attendant," the young woman said tearfully, holding Margaret's hand. "And today, you reminded me what that truly means." 1 month after the viral flight, SkyNation's New York headquarters buzzed with anticipation. It was the day of the airline's annual Leadership and Service Summit. But this year felt different. For the first time, the founders themselves, Henry and Margaret Lawson, would address every new and veteran employee. The crowd in the grand conference hall included pilots, flight attendants, ground crew, and executives, all dressed in SkyNation blues and golds. In the front row sat Amanda, no longer afraid of judgment, now flanked by her new team, young recruits she would soon lead as head of passenger empathy training. The lights dimmed. A hush fell. Then, 2 spotlights lit up the stage as Henry and Margaret walked in slowly, hand in hand. The entire room rose in a standing ovation. Many had only seen them through photos or heard of their legacy. But now, they stood there, not as legends, but as living reminders of humility, courage, and grace. Henry stepped up to the microphone, pausing before he spoke. "We never imagined," he began, "that a simple flight home would stir a national conversation about respect." A ripple of quiet agreement moved through the room. "But maybe," he continued, "it was time." He gestured toward Margaret, who now joined him at the podium. Her voice, though soft, carried emotion and strength. "We were once just 2 dreamers with $1,000 and a belief that travel could feel like home. We built SkyNation on the idea that every seat, no matter the price, held someone with a story worth honoring." She paused, then smiled directly at Amanda. "And sometimes," she added, "you have to be humbled to remember what truly matters. And when you remember, you can rebuild, stronger, kinder." Amanda's eyes welled. She wasn't alone. Throughout the room, tissue boxes quietly passed from hand to hand. Margaret turned to the audience. "So today, we challenge you, not to serve rules, but to serve people, not to protect a reputation, but to protect someone's dignity." Henry concluded with a single, powerful line. "From this day forward, SkyNation doesn't just fly aircraft, we lift lives." Another standing ovation followed. But it wasn't just applause. It was transformation. The summit ended with employees forming small circles for storytelling sessions, sharing moments of regret, redemption, and joy from their careers. Amanda led one of the largest groups, her voice steady, her heart open. Weeks later, Margaret and Henry sat together on their porch in Vermont, watching the late summer sun dip behind the hills. In her lap, Margaret held a printed letter from a 26-year-old flight attendant named Janelle. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, when I almost quit this job, it was your story that kept me here. Your video wasn't just inspiring, it was instructive. You reminded us all why this uniform matters, why kindness still matters, and why flying with purpose means more than ever before. Thank you for staying kind, even when no one knew who you were." Margaret folded the letter gently, smiling. "We started this airline to connect cities," she said, her voice wistful. "But maybe, in the end, We've helped connect hearts." Henry nodded, pulling a blanket gently over her shoulders. "And that," he said, "will always be the most valuable destination." The wind rustled the trees above. The air was still, but somewhere out there, a SkyNation plane soared above the clouds, carrying hundreds of strangers, each with a story, and now, perhaps, a little more dignity.